cricket world. Now the rule seems coming to an...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 39 of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I had to pause there for a second because I couldn't even remember how many we'd done. But I'm your co-host, Mashal St. Patrick Hewitt. And as ever on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, my partner in crime is alongside me.
Yeah, Mash Shantoki here. Great to be back on. And Mashal, what are we calling this one? A South London special, yeah?
Yeah, but you're not included because as I've long told you before, doesn't count as South London. So when we talk about South London, we mean South East London. That's what we actually mean when we say South London. But today you can jump in just this one time. But Santoki, who we got on today? It's a special guest. I'm going to let you intro the guest, and I'll take it from there.
Yeah, so this one's been in the making for a while. We've been messaging back and forth for a while now, and ahead of the county season, it's great to have him on. He was recently appointed permanent vice captain of his side, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he performs in the season ahead. So today we welcome Daniel Bell-Drummond. Daniel, how are you doing? And thanks for coming on.
Nah, it's great to be on, and I'm doing really well, just preparing for the season, but massive fan of the podcast, and really happy to be on.
Good to hear. And Daniel, am I correct in saying your parents are of Jamaican origin?
Yeah, they're both Jamaican, not just origin. Yeah, they're born and bred in Jamaica. Came over here in sort of their late teens, ages ago. But no, they're both Jamaican, so...
And has West Indies cricket always been something close to your heart then in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously my parents and family are massive West Indies supporters, and I grew up supporting both England and the West Indies. So obviously all my family and a lot of my friends were West Indian. But yeah, I was always playing Kent age groups from a very young age, and I played sort of England 15s, England 17s, 19s. So, no, being born and bred in England, I was definitely a big fan of both. But no, having represented, England in youth ages, I was quickly permanently an England fan from that point of view. But I still have a place in my heart, obviously, for the West Indies for sure.
Well, our aim across the rest of this podcast is to make sure that by the end you've decided that you're a West Indian fan only by the end of the podcast. But as Santoki says, Daniel, absolutely brilliant to get you on. You're one of the domestic cricketers who I followed closely, as much as I'm a massive West Indian fan, because I went to school locally. And particularly counted Kent essentially as the county side that I would follow, given that that's essentially where I went to school. I've been following your career for a very long time, so it's an honor to have you on. And actually, funny enough, before I hand Santoki to talk about kind of like your early career, this is how I first knew about you, actually, Daniel, which is interesting, but I support a football team. So that football team is Bromley, because that's where I went to primary school. I went to primary school in Bromley, and when I used to, I still do, watch Bromley home and away, there's a fan, massive cricket fan, who also watches Bromley with me, who had been talking about you from a young age. And he was saying, you've got to watch out for this lad called Daniel Bell-Drummond, who plays for Catford Wanderers. Is that correct, Daniel?
That I played for Catford Wanderers. Yeah, for sure. So that's my dad. Been chairman there for years, and that's literally where I learned cricket. So I used to follow him to his games every Saturday, Sunday, and I was that annoying kid, just wanting the players to bowl at me when it was meant to be their break. So that's where I grew up and started my cricket, and. I still have fond memories of that club, still a member there. I moved to Blackheath, which is just down the road, when I sort of turned 16 and was fully in the Kent Academy and stuff. So I had to move on because they're in Division 3, I think. But no, it's a place I go a lot of the time when I'm free, for sure. And I always go back there. And no, it's where I first learned my cricket. So it's a massive place for me, massive club.
Excellent. I'll be making sure that he definitely listens to this podcast, because he literally has been following your career from the very beginning. But Santoki, I'll let you go.
Yeah, Daniel. So you mentioned your dad there. I believe I read he played, was it for Dorset, as a cricketer? So is it safe to say that's kind of where your passion for cricket kind of started through your dad's influence?
Absolutely, yes. He was in the British Army for a while and played for the Army team. And yeah, I think 'cause they're based in Blandford, or I think that's the regiment near Dorset. So yeah, when he had some time off, he went and played cricket for Dorset. I believe he did very well. I know a lot of West Indians talk a good game, like from especially the older ones. I think they were all Viv Richards in their day, but yeah, he was a really good cricketer. Like I caught the back end of his sort of club career, and no, I know he was highly thought of around the local teams and stuff. So no, he's been massive for me, and I definitely started because of him. And yeah, he threw me a lot of balls as a kid in the house as well. A lot of broken tiles and windows that I'm still having to pay for. But yeah, he was massive. And my mum, obviously, like, she doesn't know cricket as much as my dad, obviously, but she was massive in getting me to where I am today, for sure.
And you went to the prestigious Millfield boarding school. At what point did you think, okay, this is it, cricket could be a career for me? At what age did you start to think that?
To be honest, I just love cricket so much, and I feel so. I was at Dulwich College, or Dulwich Prep. I went to Holbeach Primary first in Lewisham, and then I was at Dulwich Prep for a little while. And I remember the headmaster there used to be the headmaster at Millfield, great man, and he said to my dad, he was like, "Look, I feel like your son would be brilliant for this school." It was actually, in my opinion, the best cricket school in the country. And yeah, he just saw from an early age that I loved the game so much, and yeah, that was what I wanted to be, even as like an 8, 9, 10-year-old. So yeah, that's how I went to Millfield School, and ever since, honestly, like, I've never even thought about it. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but growing up, I always was one of the best in my age group. I played England sort of age groups all the years up. I played England 19s as a 16-year-old, and yeah, definitely Millfield for sure was a massive part of that, as well as obviously the Catford and Blackheath. But I feel like Millfield, I was training amongst the best players in the country, really, and we were playing against the best teams all the time. So I was always improving and always stretching out my capabilities from a young age. So yeah, I've always sort of had it in my heart that I would be a professional cricketer from a young age.
Go on, Santo, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Millfield's obviously produced like a lot of cricketers over the years. Kind of, what is it about the school? Is it the structure, the resources available to them, a combination? Kind of, what made you excel at cricket when you were during your time at the school?
I think it's a bit of everything. Obviously, they're not silly. Like they know who they're looking at, I guess, and they know they've got a wide understanding of the youth cricketers coming through. And with them being one of the best, not just cricket and rugby, there's lots of musicians. Like Ella Eyre went to Millfield. She was in the year below me. Tyrone Mings, the England centre-back, I know him very well. He was in my year at Millfield. So just so many different sports that Millfield do so well at. So I think it just, as a whole, it just breeds that sort of competition, and there's people who will be in their county teams and who will be struggling to make their A team or first team at Millfield. So, and the coaches, when I were there, were brilliant. I had Richard Ellison, who was my housemaster as well as my head coach. He was a bowler for England and Kent in the 80s. And Mark Davis was my cricket coach as well, who played for Somerset with Viv Richards, Joel Garner, Ian Botham, that sort of era, and they were brilliant for me. Like, I couldn't have gone there at a better time, to be honest. And yeah, they took me under their wing, and and not just that, I was able to hit 24/7. So when I mean, when there's a spare time at lunch, I'd go and hit on the machine. After school, I'd go and hit on the machine, or get people to bowl at me and bowl back at them. So no, I don't. Yeah, I gave myself the best chance to succeed, and everyone there does. I think the facilities and the coaching you get just breeds that. So no, that's how it happened, really.
how do you? And I think I'm not. I guess this question might sound a bit weird, Daniel, but how did you, if you can, how do you make the transition? Was it just that your dad, by force, was like, Daniel, you're going to make it? Like, do you see what I mean? How can you talk us through that in a bit more detail?
What the transition from Lewisham
from like
to Millfield,
go from like Holly Beach Primary School in Catford. Even if your dad, so your dad's obviously an ex-cricketer, he's obviously helping you along. You're following his career, you're going with him, but still, it still takes more than just you being interested in cricket to make it. Do you see what I mean? So talk us through the steps of how you went from primary to so Catford Wanderers, then to Blackheath to via Dulwich. Do you see what I mean? Just
I know I get this question a lot. Like it's a very sort of interesting way of doing it because they're two completely different systems, aren't they? Like the club cricket system in South London, and then you've got the private school system. So for me, like Dulwich was the brilliant sort of in-between school where it was South London. I know it's a brilliant school in the sense of the kids they get in there, but not just that. Like I know it's a fee-paying school. It's most people would know sort of Dulwich Prep London, but for me, like I was always in between both. So I'd finish cricket for the school on a Saturday, and then I'd go straight to Catford Wanderers. My brother would give me a lift or something to my dad's game. So I was always sort of in and out of both environments. So I never felt. It's not as simple as to say I didn't feel out of place in either environment, but I was always used to it, and I was always in and out of both. So I knew how both environments worked, and I think, to be honest, that's been a blessing for me, just being able to, understand sort of how I was able to not get by, but enjoy my school life, and also, grow up in South London and have so many friends there, and play cricket, and just have friends in general around the area where we're from. But no, I feel definitely that the mixture was brilliant for me, and I feel Dulwich was definitely the step in between because I remained local, but I was also able to go to Catford every Saturday and train or play cricket or play with the kids there. So now that transition to Millfield, I don't know, because obviously I was playing with Kent as well. I was always going away for a week at a time, so we would go to the Taunton Festival, or we'll go to Cornwall and have a festival there for like a week. So even as a young kid, I was used to being away from home for stuff like that. So that's how.
Just for a second, Daniel. Just to jump in there, did Kent pick you up because of you being at Blackheath, or were you already spotted before then?
No. I was spotted at Catford Wanderers.
Right. Okay.
It's like when I was 7 or 8 years old.
Okay.
And so I played like Kent under 10s, I think was the first. So there's literally a picture on Sam Billings's in his living room of them carrying me off because I was so small. Like, I don't think I had front teeth; they were still growing, and they were carrying me off the pitch because I managed to hit a 4 or something like that. But I remember playing with Sam Billings, Adam Ball. He's finished with Kent now, but quite a few guys when I was sort of 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. So I think Kent, I was always in the Kent system from early as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then in terms of, so we spoke at the top, obviously your parents migrated over from Jamaica, much like mine, in their late teens, early 20s, whatever it might be. Which West Indian player, whether your dad thought he was Viv or not, which West Indian player did you admire, or were you just trying to copy your dad?
No, I wasn't just trying to copy my dad. So the era I grew up in was like Jimmy Adams, obviously, Chanderpaul, Chris Gale at the start of Gale, Samuel. So that sort of era, and I caught quite a bit of Lara at the start of his career, at the end of his career, sorry, which was great. And along with the English guys like the KPs, the Trescothics. My favourite West Indian players were definitely Lara, and then probably Gail after Lara went. So not again, I'm right-handed, I'm skinny, like I'm not Chris Gale, but so not that I copied him per se, but they were definitely my favourite batsmen to watch growing up from the West Indian point of view. And
taking that further, because again, this is something Santoki and I have discussed, and I think certainly some of the Afro-Carib listeners to the podcast who are in the UK would echo the same. We've always said, both on here and in private discussion, that we've always felt that there has been like a gap between, so let's take our parents' generation and this current generation, whereby I almost feel like our generation was the very last lot to hear about the oral tradition of cricket from a Caribbean perspective. So having parents who had grown up with the tradition of West Indies are all conquering, they beat everybody, they're amazing, they saw all of it, then we come up as the next generation who see them lose, and then you go a generation underneath us, and it just hasn't translated. And I don't mean necessarily translated in terms of following the West Indies, I just mean translated in terms of following cricket. So for example, Daniel, you could walk past me in Catford High Street and I'd probably recognize you, but I reckon it might take another, I don't know how many more people to recognize that it might be you. Do you think that's fair, or do you think that's or is that not your experience?
No, it's 100% the truth. The only people I know in Catford or who know me is family or friends. Like no one would have a clue about sort of, well, obviously that's just my experience, but obviously people would, but no, like for the most part, definitely it's not well known amongst the younger sort of Afro-Caribbean kids for sure. Like I can vouch for that. They're much more into football or anything else but cricket. I don't think they see cricket as their natural sort of way in of sport. So, which is a shame, to be honest, but that's also the reality of the situation. But no, I can walk Lewisham and know 100% that people won't recognise me unless it's family or friends.
And then I guess that's why that would have been part of the reason then that I think it was yourself and Tymor Mills created the platform initiative, right?
So no, he didn't.
That's right.
I know him obviously fairly well, playing England junior stuff with him, and he played a few games with Blackheath about 6-7 years ago. No, I'm not involved anymore, but yeah, at the time, I helped start it up, just with that view in mind that these kids growing up have no real access to cricket, and yeah, I'd like to at the time I was wanting to bridge that gap and try and bring people to enjoy cricket more, not just be that next sort of Jofra Archer or whoever or play professional cricket, but yeah, just love the game and potentially play on Saturdays. Like, so I'm probably the last of that generation. It's because my parents are so old, but yeah, I'm probably the last of that generation really. But yeah, I just felt that a lot of the kids always gravitated to football or other things, and yeah, it was definitely a missed opportunity, I feel, for a lot of kids, and not just the kids, but the schools and the bodies in charge. That there's so many people here that they could be looking at, which they are attempting to do that, and I know from what I've heard, all this stuff is being looked at and being worked on for sure. So I'm not pointing any fingers there, but definitely at the time, I just felt, even the kids at Catford Wanderers, I just didn't know, like, if they didn't have a dad like mine to drive them an hour and 30 to Canterbury after school on a Wednesday, like, I don't really know what chance they had unless they bowled 90 miles an hour. So yeah, that was my thinking at the time for sure. And me, like, having a lot of opportunities and a lot more than some of my friends had, I definitely felt that way about it. Yeah, that was where I stood with that.
Santoki, before I hand to you, actually, you just got one last thing I wanted to ask. Actually, Daniel, because again, those who follow the domestic scene know this very well, but just keeping on this kind of South London line, when you have played for Kent, obviously Kent's home ground is in Canterbury, but Kent sometimes play in Beckenham. When you've played in have you noticed a difference in crowd between, you may not have, I'm just intrigued, have you noticed any difference between playing in Canterbury and playing in Beckenham in terms of what, like, not size of crowd, but just have you noticed any real difference between the two in terms of drawing a different dynamic? And I don't even demographic, and I don't necessarily even mean Afro-Caribbean. I just mean in general, like a younger demographic or whatever it might be, because Canterbury's far away. If I live in Lewisham, so if I want to go and watch Kent, chances of me going to Canterbury very often, slim. But when I know they're playing in Beckenham, strong. So do you get any difference in the experience?
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, definitely from a demographic point of view, but obviously that would be the case. But no, I feel there's a lot of Kent fans who do live this side of, or not. I'm in Canterbury now, but who do live on the Beckenham side of Kent. So I feel like there's so many people who live in London but are Kent fans who come and watch. So yeah, I do feel the demographic slightly different, but that's neither here nor there. But in the sense of the younger people, I do think, to be honest, I'd say 4-day cricket, there definitely is. At Canterbury, it's obviously a lot more members and a lot older crowd. But in Beckenham, for 4-day cricket, potentially there is a lot sort of younger people there. But I feel like because that's a festival week and it's once a year.
Yeah.
But Canterbury crowd has also been brilliant. I think they're both great. I think obviously my family and friends come more when I'm playing at Beckenham, but the Canterbury crowd also, I think last 5 years has been brilliant. I think since we've really started doing well, like in the white ball stuff, it's always packed out, obviously before COVID. And no, like obviously there's a lot of club cricketers around that Canterbury area as well. So they'll come like after their Saturday game or whatever. So not really. I feel Kent always play Surrey at Beckenham as well, and then it's always a massive crowd for the obvious reason that Beckenham's right next to Surrey. So it's hard to say, but not a massive difference.
Okay. Santoki.
Yeah. So let's get on to Kent and your career at Kent. So as you said, you've been there since you were a child. I think it's coming up to about 10 years now since you signed pro contracts at Kent. And you obviously made vice captain this year. I think a good place to start is obviously last year in the T20 Blast, you were the leading run scorer, 423 runs, strike rate of 154, which is incredible, averaging 42, and you were captain for a few games as well. Obviously, with the pandemic going on, cricket's been a challenge for athletes to kind of get ready and kind of get match fit and kind of put up performances. We've seen that across international games, domestic games. Kind of how much of a challenge was it for you? Because you did manage to kind of prosper during the T20 Blast held during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, I found it quite tough at first. Like I was able to keep fit, obviously. I was staying in Crystal Palace at the time in the last lockdown just gone. And it was perfect. I was able to keep fit, but training was quite tough because we were on furlough. So we weren't able to even go to the local park and train. So that was quite tough. But when we came back, it's funny how cricket works. Like, especially that I'm not that young in the game anymore, but I've always felt I need to hit a lot of balls and I need to train. And I always go away and play grey cricket in Australia if I don't have sort of T20 commitments around the world. But I feel like it just showed that you don't need to always be playing cricket. You just need to, especially in my scenario, that was one lesson I learned. But I just need to make sure I'm match fit and I'll make sure I'm ready at that period and keep working on my things in the nets. So that was a lesson for me. But no, it was quite tough at the time. But July was a brilliant month for us. We were able to train and obviously the wickets were perfect because it was middle of the summer. So that was like our pre-season, but we were able to train every day and make sure we were ready for the start of the season, which happened in August. Was it August? Yeah, it started in August, didn't it? So no, it was quite weird, but luckily it didn't really make much difference.
And you're someone who plays all formats. How hard do you find it to kind of balance? Kind of, obviously you're performing well in T20, but then you'd have to move to Red Bull later this month and then go back to T20 50 over, and you're also in the 100 as well, which is a completely new format. How do you manage to kind of juggle performances across the formats?
Yeah, it can be quite tough, to be honest, especially opening the batting, because in Red Bull, obviously it does the most generally in that period, whereas white ball, we're probably meant to be the most attacking batsman and take advantage of the power play. So they're completely opposite. But for me, I've just learned that my basics are the same, and making sure in the nets, I just make sure I practice. Even when I'm practicing white ball stuff, I don't practice slogging too much. Like, I'll make sure my shapes are good, and then this is learning from the other guys as well, guys like Sam Billings, Denley, not just them, but other cricketers I've played with, and I'll make sure my technique's good, and then I'll adapt on the day in the white ball form, because I feel I need to definitely prepare more for red ball than white ball. I feel like white ball cricket, the game can dictate to me how I need to go. Like, if you need to go at 12 and over, you need to go. There's no two ways about it. But definitely red ball can be very challenging in England, opening the batting. So that's definitely the thing where I don't want to be out of sync for that, and I make sure that I train well, and I train well all the time, obviously, but I really keep a keen eye on that to make sure my basics are good. But yeah, it can be tough, but I'm learning now. Like you say, 10 years playing professional cricket, so I'm getting a lot better at adjusting.
Yeah, and I think a question we got from a lot of followers on social media is kind of, as you said, 10 years in county cricket. Who have been the toughest bowlers you faced in county cricket?
It's a good question. Obviously, there's different types. So obviously, you have your rapid bowlers, like, who really push you back and are a challenge. Obviously, Jofra Archer down the hill at Hove and Time Mills, they can be horrible. It's enjoyable to face them, to be honest, but at the time, it's quite tough. Them coming down the hill at Hove, but I'd say those two. From a red ball perspective, I'd say at the moment Ollie Robinson's up there. So the Sussex seamer, he's a brilliant bowler. I grew up with him, actually. He played youth cricket at Kent, ironically. So I think he's brilliant. I just think he's obviously behind Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad. So he's going to struggle to get in at the moment in the England team, but he's great. I found Lewis Gregory quite good as well, from Somerset. But these are guys who, obviously, everyone finds Jimmy Anderson tough. I don't need to tell you that. But these are guys that I play against quite a bit, and I've found a good challenge. I look forward to playing against them because they bring out the best of me and stuff like that. So I'd say those two sort of come top of my list. And Craig Overton as well. The Somerset guys are good.
Has there ever been like an overseas player who's come in for a short stint and you thought, wow, this is impressive stuff?
Trying to think.
West Indian, please.
I don't think I've faced many of the West Indian guys. Obviously, we've got Miguel Cummins in our dressing room. I'm trying to think. To be fair, I faced Miguel Cummins last year, actually, and he was a handful. I think that was part of the reason why Kent signed him, because he got 5 against Kent in August last year. He's very good. Trying to think back. No, I haven't faced many of. I've faced the West Indian guys, obviously, in the competition in the Caribbean that Kent played in. But I'm just trying to think. Obviously, Simon Harmer is really tough from Essex. He's the offspring. He takes a lot of wickets every year. And Philander, obviously Vernon Philander, just those kind of world-class bowlers, definitely tough. Amir, when Essex had Mohammed Amir, I think he got 5 in his last ever Red Bull game against us at Canterbury. He was a handful as well. So there's always a lot of good bowlers flying around in county cricket. So whichever teams you play against. So I've had a lot of tough battles against bowlers over the years, but hopefully some more going forwards.
Definitely.
sorry, Santo, I'm just going to jump in there because some of Daniel's answers there, I've just been taking some notes down because he's making me think about so many different things as you've been saying that. But speaking of bowlers, Daniel, so Darren Stevens has inspired me because he makes me think that I could still make my debut for West Indies. How you're someone who shares a dressing room and have done for your whole career. What is it about? I know this is you on the podcast, but what is it about him that means that, what is he, 44 now? I think he is. What is it? 45, yeah. What is it that makes him so difficult to face? You face him in the nets. How comes he gets so many people nicking off? Not that I'm saying that you shouldn't be, I'm not saying the cricketer is past it at 45. I mean, Chris Gale's still playing top level cricket at 41, so people can clearly do it. But what is it specifically about him from inside the Kent, from a batsman who's inside the Kent dressing room?
He's just a genius. Sometimes we think the same thing, like obviously he's unbelievable bowler, but we just can't work it out. Like he's not that quick. And yeah, we just don't know how he does it. But I feel facing him, he gets the ball to move both ways. And I know most bowlers can do that, but he can generally do it to the exact amount he wants. So he can, obviously he's played county cricket since the 90s, so he knows how batsmen are looking to play him. And the one thing I think that batsmen do, not that I'm trying to give away his secrets, but a lot of batsmen try and walk at him, and anyone would think, you're meant to try and walk at a slower bowler to make sure it's tough for them to give you out LBW. But I think he's so great because he doesn't get that much bounce. He can still hit people in line when they walk down at him. And then it means that because they've lost their off stump, for instance, they then start nicking off to balls they wouldn't have played at, and he still knows he can get them LBW. But I think he's just a genius. Like, he knows exactly how he's going to get batsmen out. He knows exactly what delivery he's going to bowl. And I feel sorry for the other batsmen facing him, to be honest. But I definitely don't understand in the nets. Like, there's been plenty of times that he's made us look stupid as batsmen. So no, I don't envy the opposition for sure.
Sorry, Santoki, I jumped in there.
Yeah, no worries, Nash. I thought, when Daniel, you mentioned there you toured the Caribbean with Kent for Super 50 for I think 2 editions, 2017 and 2018. I guess the kind of the first point to start with was, how did you find playing in the Caribbean? I think you played pretty much all your matches in Antigua.
Yeah, that's correct. So I really enjoyed it. It was great to obviously, go back to the place of my parents, not Antigua obviously, but the Caribbean, and play professional cricket there. So that was the first time I'd ever done it. So that was great. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, Antigua was a lovely place. Like, the wickets were quite challenging. It took a while to get used to. I struggled the first year I went there because of that. Just sort of very spin based out there. The wickets, they're not, even though they can be quite flat. They're not, like, I wouldn't describe them as English flat. Like, it's harder to hit through the line. So I found that quite tough. But the second year I went there, I feared a lot better. I did quite well, and I was glad to be able to show what I could do there for sure. But no, I feel it's a great place to play, and not just on the pitch, off the pitch. The hotel we stayed at, the beaches, it's a lovely, as we all know, it's a lovely part of the world. So no, it's something the guys really enjoyed, and it was a shame we couldn't go back. I think they changed the time of year it was, so it didn't match up, and then it couldn't happen again. But I think Jimmy Adams sorted that out because he used to be the Kent coach, and now he's been director of cricket West Indies for a while. So that was great to go there for 2 years, obviously.
It's interesting you mentioned kind of going back, not specifically to the country, but the region where your parents were from. But you actually hit a century against Jamaica it was in 2018.
So sad.
Kind of did that century, obviously all centuries are special. Did that kind of have a special place for you because it was against the country of your parents?
Of course, 100%. I remember. I still don't think my dad was supporting Kent. You know how Jamaicans are, very patriotic, passionate. Even though, yeah, even though I was playing for Kent. But yeah, I really enjoyed that day. I'd struggled up to that point, and not just that. It wasn't just the country where my parents are from, but obviously, I know quite a few of the Jamaican cricketers. I've played against Chris Gale before, and he's been amazing to me. Like I just still can't believe how good of a guy he is. And yeah, I was playing against quite a few of them. There's a few guys I played against in the 19s years. So no, it was just good to go and show them, like, yeah, I can play, and to be able to score runs against them as well. So it was a great day for me. Obviously, at the time, I was just trying to help Kent do well, but definitely it was great if I could have picked a team to score 100 against, it would have been Jamaica for sure.
Santoki, I can't believe what I'm hearing, you know. But Daniel, it's interesting that you mention actually Jimmy Adams as well. So obviously, as you say, Jimmy was coach at Kent. I think it was 5 years Jimmy was there before he came back to the Caribbean and obviously took on his role here. And I hope Jimmy doesn't mind me saying, but I think when Jimmy initially came back, he had applied for the head coach job for West Indies and eventually got the director of cricket job instead. But what was it like being a player under Jimmy out of interest? Don't worry, Jimmy's not gonna hear anything. But the reason I asked is because I had wanted, after Jimmy left Kent, I was hoping he was going to get the West Indies job to be coach. But I think he went to Stuart Law. I think that's when Stuart Law got it and Jimmy didn't get it, and Jimmy became director of cricket instead. But what was it like with Jimmy as a coach of Kent, head coach of Kent? Sorry.
It was brilliant under Jimmy. So I think he came, I was around 18 at the time. So yeah, I was just breaking into the first team. But he was great. He was a brilliant coach. I still speak to him a lot now. He's got so much knowledge about the game. So it's literally like an encyclopedia. We just question him and he tells us stories. He could talk for days on the brilliant stories he's had playing for West Indies and his cricket career in general. And not just that, obviously he's a brilliant man, but you've got to respect him, rightfully so, and you definitely listen when he talks. And I feel like, yeah, he had a good time of it at Kent, and the guys really respected him, and myself included. But no, it was great for me because obviously he's a batsman as well, and I got to learn a hell of a lot off him. But no, I really enjoyed the time he had with Kent, and yeah, I still keep in touch with him quite regularly.
Now, you have made reference to the fact that obviously, and Santoki said it as well, you're about coming up to 10 years. In fact, from your pro contract, you're coming up to nearly 10 years deep in the game, if not already. But you're still young. You're only 27. And you haven't at this stage, and the reason I say this is because having watched your career and having followed Kent cricket, there was a time where I thought you were, and I know you're going to have to pick your words carefully here, but there was a time where I thought you were a shoo-in for an England call-up. And I'm not saying you won't in the future, but when England was struggling for openers, I thought you were close, and you were in the A team, and I thought, surely Daniel's time is coming soon. But do you think you suffered because Kent were in Div 2? And I don't know the county scene well enough to even make this comment, so I'm just throwing this out there. Do you think that if you're not in Div 1, you're not really on the radar as much, or do you think it doesn't make a difference? I could be wrong here, Daniel. I'm just throwing this out there.
Yeah, no, it's all about opinions. Obviously, there is a sway to Div 1, and one would argue rightly so, because it's tougher cricket, and you're playing against the best teams week in, week out. But no, in my position, I don't think that held too much weight. I know Duckett got picked around a similar time to, I think it's 2016 you're probably talking about, 2017. Duckett got picked around that time, and he scored a heck of a lot of runs for Northamptonshire. So no, and I was very young at the time, so it definitely did get held against people, but I don't think it would have got held against me. I just think they have different categories. So I think if they see a young player and they like them, I think they back them and they go with them. And that was Duckett at that time. But I don't think, and I'd scored 100 against Australia the year before. So in my head, I think that I'd shown, even though it was a practice game, I'm not here to say it was an Ashes game, but in my head, I feel like the selectors saw that what I could do against very good opposition. So I don't think Division 2 would have been held against me. I think it was more consistency of runs or timing, stuff like that happened at that particular point. It definitely does hold weight. But for me at that time, I don't think that was the case.
Now, it's interesting that you say that the quality is definitely higher in Div 1, because I was one of the people, and that just shows I don't watch enough county cricket, because I was one of the people who's like, nah, it can't be that different. But as a player, do you definitely notice the difference between a Div 1 and Div 2?
I say it's definitely better. Like, obviously, the bigger counties are normally in Division 1, and they're going to attract the best players, like the best overseasers. So there's times you play Surrey and they had Mornay, Morkel, the Currans, some serious players. But I don't think it's necessarily easier or harder to score runs in Division 1 or 2, because I think that I know the system's changed. We're in this year and last year, we're actually in sort of 3 separate groups. But yeah, I think it's definitely, like, the caliber of player. You definitely have more international players because the test counties tend to be in Division 1. But I don't necessarily think it was any easier or harder to score runs, because the type of cricket was different. The test grounds sometimes have better wickets. And yeah, sometimes it's easier to face quicker bowling than slower bowling on worse wickets. Not saying the bowling was worse or better, but it's just a different style of cricket. So even though I say the standard is better in the sense the caliber of players is probably higher, I don't think it was any easier to score runs or take wickets, in my opinion, having played in both divisions, for sure.
Yeah. And Santoki, you might come off the back of this after I say this. It's interesting, Daniel, because again, I'm thinking about your early career, and early on in your career, I had you down as Daniel's going to play for England, and it's definitely going to be in red ball cricket. That was me about 5-6 years ago. I was like, yeah, Daniel's going to be playing. He's going to be a test opener for England, and I'm going to root for him. As time has gone on, I'm not saying that you won't be, but as time has gone on, I'm like, wait a minute, Daniel's white ball form is a madness right now. But then England won the World Cup, so it's a weird one, because you're putting up the numbers T20, as Santoki referred to earlier on. Well, let's not forget that your List A numbers are very, very impressive as well. But that's probably the harder format to get into. Do you think that is right to say, or how do you see it as a player?
No, definitely, without doubt. The England Test team are obviously brilliant, but I think we've seen with the amount of players who have been in and out of that team that, obviously, one would argue like red ball cricket has its challenges and can be tougher for batsmen than white ball, in the sense of the seaming ball, especially playing in England. So, I mean, and seeing some of the wickets in India, it's going to be quite tough in red ball cricket for test batsmen in general. Rightly so, that's the aim of the game. It's test cricket for a reason. But yeah, I do think the white ball team are brilliant, and there's so much depth there. And I think that's testament to the style of play the England guys play, starting from Owen Morgan, that sort of fearless brand of cricket. And it's just shown batsmen the possibilities of, like, they can actually up their strike rates and average the same. And that's what I think is happening. But yeah, you're right. The cupboard for the England white ball team is ridiculous. I mean, got Milan, like, he's the world's #1 T20 batsman, and there always seems to be questions about his place in the team. You've got Alex Hales, who's been sort of put to the side for like 2 years now, and they're brilliant batsmen. So that's going to be very tough if I'm obviously trying to get in, but it's always going to be tough no matter what I do. I think, as long as those guys who've won the World Cup are still scoring runs, that's always going to be very tough to break into for sure.
Do you want to jump in off that?
Do you see like the T20 blast as being a clear pathway to the England team? As in, if you were top scorer again this season, would you like to think you would make the England side, or do you think it's more of a case of going to overseas leagues now as well and performing there before you're considered? Because as you said, the England T20 squad at the moment is stacked with like Jason Roy, Johnny Bairstow, David Milan, as you said. So what do you see as the pathway to kind of break that ceiling and get into the England white ball side?
Yes, I don't know. Obviously, being top run scorer last year, like I felt that would be looked at, and I definitely got my overseas opportunities in Sri Lanka and the T10 stuff. But it's a tough one. I don't know what more I could have done, to be honest. But at the same time, that team is stacked, and it's not just those guys who are in the team. There's the people below that, like Vince and Livingston. So the cupboard is full, and I feel, I've always, like Mikel said, like because I've always had this. I don't know if it's a stigma, if it's a good or bad thing, but I've always been seen as a red ball player. So, and I don't necessarily. I'm getting stronger, but I don't necessarily like hit it out of the ground consistently. So the way I play, my strike rate's very high, but I don't know. I'm definitely improving my game in that sense of being more attacking, but I don't know if in the past that's been held against me, like thinking, he's that anchor player, but I'm definitely not now. But it's tough to break into, and it's a bit annoying for me because I don't know what more I can do, but whilst they're winning and doing so well, and there's so much depth, there's not much anyone can say really, because they're doing so well.
Well, you know what, Santoki? Let me hit Daniel with it. Let me hit with it. So Daniel. So let's just say, argument's sake, 3 years from now, so you would be touching 30. Let's just say, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. Let's say 3 years from now, the call's not come, and Jimmy Adams rings your dad behind your back and says, "You know what? Just tell Daniel that West Indies have a problem right now, and all he has to do is come and play one season with Jamaica, and he's in." If you didn't get and we're talking purely hypothetical, Daniel. If you didn't get the England call, and you thought this probably isn't going to happen now, because it can. You're 27, it still can. In fact, it can happen any age. But let's just say Jimmy put the pressure on and said, "Listen, there's a spot, you know." By the way, we don't have a test opener, by the way, so I'm just letting you know that. But if you put the pressure on, would you face a dilemma? Would you? And say your dad put the pressure on and was like, "Son, it's time to come home."
You put me on the spot. I like how you worded it as well. Now, to be honest, I've genuinely always seen my path as England. Like, I love the West Indies, obviously, and I know quite a few of the players out there, haven't played against them or playing them in county cricket, etc. But I've generally always seen my path as through England. So I've played England 15s, England 17s, England 19s, England Lions as well. So I don't know, I just feel like that playing for the main team is the next step up. So for me, that's always been my agenda. And like you said, I've been around for a while, but I still feel young. And seeing Joe Denley get back in the England team as like a 33-year-old, for me, that definitely shows that if you nail it at any age and there's a gap, then there's definitely a chance. And especially in that test team, I feel obviously the guys are doing well at the minute, but it's a very tough format. And definitely if I can put a run together for Kent, that's always been my dream, to be honest. And I just think the West Indies as well, on the second point, like it's quite a like playing cricket over there, like the wickets are quite tough. It's a different brand, and obviously I back myself in all forms, but I don't want to almost speak down about them as if like, oh, I can choose to just pop over there and get a spot. Like I've played against some of those the Jamaican team, seen the West Indies played amongst them in the franchise leagues, and I know the quality they have. So yeah, I wouldn't as well want to just think I could just hop over there and take a spot either. But no, for sure, I've always seen my route as playing for England, but I have a lot of love for the West Indies and as a place, and I know a lot of the guys as well. So I always look out for them and hope they do well.
Well, to be honest, we're here to tell you that you can just pop over there and take a spot. But actually, speaking of that, though, because when you were playing for Ken in the Super 50, did you notice a difference in facilities? Because I think I'm sometimes at pains, but you might not, I don't know if you noticed or not, I'm sometimes at pains to point out to people that one of the things that holds the region back home is that, like, when I go to Canterbury and I look around, the facilities just for a county side are so much better than somebody playing for Jamaica might get. Did you notice any difference in terms of what you had accessible, or did that not really stand out?
Yeah, definitely. So I just know that in general, like just hearing from some of the guys that I played with in county cricket or in the franchise leagues, how tough it is in the West Indies. And I know the cricket board themselves, they're obviously doing their best. They've created that high performance centre, I think, at Coolidge Ground in Antigua, and I know that's a very good facility there. And we trained at the Sir Vivian Richards Ground as well, and obviously they made that very good because it was just a tournament of 4 weeks in a year. But now it must be so tough for some of those guys, and some of the issues can't really be helped. Like if you live like in the country in Jamaica and you've got to get to Antigua, that's like a day's travel away just to get, might be a good practice session in. I don't know what the facilities are obviously like in Sabina Park, but yeah, I can imagine it must be tough. And I know the cricket board, they're under pressure from what I've heard and seen, but I know they're doing their best. But no, it must be tough as players as well, because travel seems quite tough, especially in COVID times now. It must be really hitting the Caribbean hard, because it's hitting everyone in England. So I can't imagine what it must be like there with finances and facilities, stuff like that.
Santoki, just before last thing I'm saying, sorry.
Okay.
Daniel, this year you mentioned you played in Sri Lanka. Obviously you went to the T10. Is this something obviously we're in a bit of a COVID season. It's all a bit odd because it's COVID as well, but you're on franchises' radars now, I guess. And they're going to be coming for you in more and more T20 tournaments, whether that be PSL. I think CPL coincides with the English seasons. That's a bit more difficult. But is this something you're looking to expand on more over the forthcoming seasons?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be quite fickle, those leagues. So definitely, while I've had the form I've had in England, it was great to get the opportunities, and I took them to a certain extent when I got the limited opportunities I did. But yeah, it can be quite tough. Like if you don't, like I say, bowl 90 miles an hour, or you haven't played for your country, it can be quite tough to keep getting them. But no, I like to think with the performances I've had over the last couple of years that I'll be back on those franchises' radars. I had a brilliant time in Sri Lanka and made some good friends there, and same in Abu Dhabi in the T10. So I hope those are places that I can go back to, and I need to keep improving my game as well, because cricket obviously doesn't stand still for anyone. So I just need to keep making sure my performances are up there, and hopefully I can go abroad a lot more and get away from the cold in the winter.
Sorry, I'll hand back.
Yeah, Before I hand over to Michelle for the final question, I guess from a West Indian perspective, it'd be interesting to know when you were going back to that Kent trip in the Super 50. I noticed you did play against a lot of players who are now kind of in this resurgence of West Indian Test cricket. So Nkrumah Bonner, McKean Cornwall, Azari Joseph were playing for the Leewoods. I think Carl Mayers was at the Windward Islands. When you were there for the tournament, was there anyone who sort of caught your eye and thought, wow, this guy is going to be a player someday?
Good question. I think Mayers was an interesting one. So, like, I played against him in under-19 cricket, and obviously it's relevant now because of how well he's done. But he played for Windwards at the time, and he opened the bowling, bowled how he does now, like mid-70s, but very skillful. And he was batting at number 8, and I remember playing him against West Indies 19s, and he was batting 7. And I always thought, like, this guy can bat, like, and especially for the Windwards, I think he carved like 30 or 40 not out, proper technique, like hit it miles. And I was just thinking to myself, because I'd know him a little bit, I was thinking, like, why is he batting so low? Like, he's a serious batsman. And yeah, that was, so he was 28, so he would have been like 24, 25 then, and been playing for like 5 years, and he was still batting at number 8. So I couldn't figure out, like, if it was he just hadn't had the opportunity, because I know he's Bayesian, and he just had to find a spot somewhere, or whether he just didn't like think highly of his own batting. But that always stuck with me, like, and it just confirmed it. Obviously, it just jogged my memory seeing him do so well now. Was like, he could always bat, and he always struck it really well. So I was confused why he was batting so low at that point. And like, he's a very good bowler, but he's probably doing the role he should be doing now, which is like a fourth, fifth seamer, and batting top 6. So he was one for me. Trying to think in terms of youngsters, I think Shamar Holder was coming through then. So he was bowling very quick at the time. And yeah, I know he was on the West Indies radar. So he was also someone who caught my eye as well. But yeah, I'd say those 2 things stood out to me. But we played there for 2 years, so I saw so much cricket. Saw Brandon King, was a really nice, good-looking batsman as well, and he's gone on to do big things. Or I know he'll try and get back into the team, but it's good to see he's made his debut for West Indies. So no, there's so much talent. Like, even amongst the Kent guys, we're just in awe of how talented some of the players are and how clean they strike the ball. So no, it's a great competition, and it was great to play against them firsthand as well.
So thank you, Daniel. That was really interesting, and really interesting that you spotted Mayers before others had done. There was one before we come to the end, Santoki. There was just one question we missed out, which was from Millsy on Twitter, who said, and I'm assuming either he's a county fan or specifically a Kent fan, but he said Sam Billings is going to be out early season because he'll be with the IPL. So is Daniel going to captain, and is he looking forward to it?
Yeah, as it stands, I am captaining until Sam's back, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've had quite a few games over the last few years captaining while Sam was injured or with England. So no, I like to think that I know how to deal with it, and obviously there's always new challenges. But yeah, I'm always looking forward to leading the guys, and while Sam's away, especially, I speak to him quite a bit. He's in the IPL at the minute. But yeah, I always love leading Kent. It's an honour. Like we've said, I've been at the club from a 7-year-old playing youth cricket. So it's great to lead the guys and to be vice captain as well. So no, I'm really looking forward to it. We've had a few practice games already. So no, the excitement of the season is definitely getting to me a bit. So I'm just looking forward to Thursday.
So with that said and done, and obviously you're right in the midst of it, like say we're about a week out from the start of the season. So we always end our podcast with the same questions, no matter who the guest is that comes on. So you're no different. I'll slightly change them just because you won't have had enough experience of playing in the Caribbean all over it. So first question, Daniel. Favorite ground that you've played at, and I'm going to expand it, Santoki. So favorite ground you've played at in the entire world. And you can't, the only thing you can't say Canterbury. Canterbury's the only thing you can't say.
Okay. Lords, obviously, that's the pinnacle of English cricket. So definitely playing at Lords. I also enjoy Nottinghamshire as well. That's a ground I love playing at, and I really enjoy playing there. In terms of around the world, trying to think which grounds I've actually played at. No, I haven't played at many big grounds around the world. So no, I'd say Trent Bridge and Lords for sure, other than Canterbury, of course.
Excellent. Second one, best innings, red or white balls, up to you. Best innings for you personally. Now, I know earlier on you spoke about the 100 versus the Aussies, but that might not be your best. So for you personally. So what's the best innings you've played, which may or may not have been seen by people?
Yeah, professionally, it's definitely the 100 against Australia. Just how fluent I was against such a good attack. I'd love to be able to do that more. I would definitely have played a few tests if I could have replicated that. So that's definitely my best innings, how fluent I was. And then, yeah, probably back in the day, I scored 200s in a row to keep Catford Wanderers up in Division 3 as a 15-year-old or 14-year-old. So I hold that in high regard as well. Definitely the last one of those games. But yeah, professionally, definitely my 100 against Australia. And I scored 100 against Surrey in a T20. That was one of my best innings as well. So I'd put them two level with each other. But yeah, I'd probably go for Australia.
And then last question, which Santoki kind of touched on, but you can choose batsman or bowler. Best player you've seen with your own eyes. And like I say, you can choose batsman or bowler. And I'm intrigued to know who you're going to choose and why. Yeah, so best player you've seen with your own eyes where you're like, oh my God, they're super talented.
What, like be it playing against them at a game or like?
It could be, actually, Santoki, what are we saying? Playing against or in general or watching?
In general,
yeah. Best player in general that you've seen with your own eyes.
Obviously, I have to say Brian Lara. Yeah, I loved him growing up. I'll put along with KP. I know they're obviously not in the same class, but just those two for me, like when they stood up and made it count, like they just did ridiculous things, whether that was KP like in the Ashes 2005 and taken on like the best attack in the world, and he just literally stepped in the arena and was treating them like almost club cricket. But no, as a whole, I've always thought Brian Lara is the best batsman I've ever seen. I just thought he was class, like the way, not that I bat like him in any way, or tried to bat like him, but just the way he dominated spin. And yeah, the way he, when he got in, he definitely made it count. So those are the two things that stuck with me about Brian Lara. And yeah, obviously I'm not going to say it's not been drummed into me from my family, but yeah, I'd say definitely Lara and probably KP as well.
I'm just going to throw a tiny bit here, though. When we interviewed Hayden Walsh, right? So he mentioned that he was at CPL last year. He was with Rashid Khan at Barbados Tridents. And I remember a little anecdote he told us where it was like, he saw Rashid do some stuff in the nets. And he was like, how do you even do that? Has there ever been a player? And this was Hayden Walsh, who had like, he was the player of the tournament for CPL that year. And he was the previous year, and he was like, Rashid Khan, he was looking at him going, how do you do what you're doing? Has there ever been a batsman where you've approached him, he's like, I don't have that in my skill set. How do you do that? I'm just intrigued to know if there's anyone you've ever come across like
that. There definitely is. I'm just trying to think. Zach Crawley's not far off that, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, he's on his day, he is a ridiculous batsman. I'm trying to think in the past who I've played with or who I know well enough to have seen what they can do consistently. I got a chance to play with Renda Sehwag at an MCC game in about 6-7 years ago, and yeah, he was a genius as well. And it's obviously I played against Alistair Cook in a warm-up game, I think 2 days ago, and he's probably one of the greatest players I played against. But his strengths is more mental, and he knows his game really well. So I don't watch it. It's not necessarily like the best player I've seen, but because Alistair Cook is the opposite, like he's the best player I've played on a pitch with probably, and I don't watch him and think like, wow, like how can I learn that? But it's just his decision making over time. But for me, Sehwag, just the opposite to that. He did things I was like, I think they had like a second or third slip, and he purposely ran it. It was a seamer bowling, and he purposely like guided it between the keeper and like the second slip, just something ridiculous. Like they both nearly dived into each other, and like he just had that skill. So that was something that really stuck with me, just the skill he had. And then yeah, just obviously it's fresh in my mind. Like I just trained with him earlier today, but Zach Crawley, some of the things he can do is ridiculous. I'm not surprised how well he's doing for England. And he's a brilliant white ball player as well. I don't know how he's going to get into the white ball team just yet, as we've explained how good their team is. But I saw him score a brilliant 100 against Hampshire off about 40 odd balls in September last year, where he took them down. I think Shaheen Shah Afridi, he smashed everywhere, and he's probably one of the best left-arm seamers in the world. And he absolutely took him to pieces. So, yeah, that's obviously fresh in my mind, but those two come to mind for sure.
Awesome. Santoki, anything you want to end with?
No, just as disappointed as me and Mashal are that you haven't committed to West Indies on this podcast, we do wish you all the best in making the England side. You definitely have the talent to do it, and we really hope you do. We do get to see you with an England cap one day, and also wishing you the best ahead of the county season, which, as you say, started next week.
Thank you so much, and great to be on the podcast. Massive fan of you guys, so keep up the good work as well.
No doubt. And although listeners, if you're sitting there going, how has Santoki given up so easily? Don't worry, I'll still be fighting the good fight. And I'll be jumping into Daniel's DMs, reminding him every year there is the West Indies, you know. But Daniel, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Absolutely loved it. Thank you for being so honest with us about everything. Really good chat. Ladies and gents, those who've been listening, that's been Daniel Bell-Drummond. Any last words, Daniel? Sorry, before I wrap it up.
No, that's me. Just great to be on, and I look forward to this coming out.
No worries. So, ladies and gents, that's been episode 39. That's been Daniel Bell-Drummond. If you aren't a Kent fan, that's the club you need to support. We're fully behind them on this podcast for the forthcoming season. If COVID allows us, get to a game this year. We hope we can come out and go watch some cricket this year. And Daniel, thank you so much. That's me and Santoki. That's episode 39. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the